The honourable member for St. Barbe.
Mr. Speaker, Section 67 of the Children Youth Care Protection Act says a youth needing protective intervention can sign a youth services agreement to get supports and funding from CYFS. If that youth was in custody or care of CYFS on their 16th birthday, they can receive supports until their 21st birthday. But if they were not in care and custody of CYFS on their 16th birthday, they can receive supports only until their 19th birthday. I asked the Minister, why does he provide supports to some youth until age 21, but to others only until age 19, when all of them are considered by his department to need protective intervention?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to say over here that our government wanted to make sure that services and assistance and supports to very vulnerable youth didn't just end at the age of 16, Mr. Speaker, and that's why we support the advancements of programs of youth beyond 16, because it's not that many years ago, Mr. Speaker, that when a young person reached the age of 16, they were no longer entitled to services from Childhood Family Services. At the time, it used to come under the healthcare authorities, Mr. Speaker, but we took the steps. We took the steps to create a standalone department to provide those services, and we've advanced.
Order, please.
And we've advanced those services to youth beyond 16. And yes, there are conditions, Mr. Speaker, but I tell the member opposite, I know from my own personal experience that as a young person ages and passes the age of 16, it becomes much more difficult to ensure they stay within those programs.
The honourable member for St. Barbe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'll ask the Premier the question again. I know the Finance Minister is not good at math, and maybe the Premier is not good at ages. Section 67 of the Children and Youth Care Protection Act says a youth needing protective intervention can sign a youth services agreement to get supports and funding from CYFS. If that youth was in custody or care on their 16th birthday, they can receive supports until their 21st. But if they were not in care and custody on their 16th birthday, they can only receive supports until their 19th birthday. So the question is, why does the Premier provide supports to some youth until age 21, but to others until age 19, when all of them are considered by his department to need protective intervention?
The Honourable the Premier.
So, Mr. Speaker, to put it in perspective, what used to happen was when a young person turned 16, their services and programs that were available to them came to an abrupt end. It stopped happening. And what we've done, Mr. Speaker, is we now advance those services. So if a young person who's receiving care and support at the age of 16, and let's say, for example, they have a serious interest in furthering their education, Mr. Speaker, then those services will continue with that youth, so they can continue to support their...
Order, please.
It'll support their efforts, Mr. Speaker, to continue with that education. And bringing that person right up to the age of 21 affords them an equal and beneficial opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to complete a post-secondary education as well, with grounded supports and assistance around them, Mr. Speaker. And that's why we changed it and provide better services than ever been provided before to those people.
The honourable member for St. Barbe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the question was about age discrimination between 21-year-olds and 19-year-olds. The question is, why does this government provide support to some youth until age 21, but to others only until age 19, when all of them are considered by this government to need protective intervention? Why the discrimination?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I just referenced it, and I'll reference it again for the benefit of member opposite, because this is about children who are receiving, children and youth who are...
Order, please.
About children and youth who are receiving services, Mr. Speaker, from Childhood Family Services. And instead of just cutting them off like used to happen, Mr. Speaker, it's a chance to continue with those programs and services so that youth can continue to benefit from those services and programs, especially when they're engaged and they want those services. Now, we see circumstances, Mr. Speaker, where 16 or 17-year-olds, they don't want the services. They don't want to be engaged with government at that point in their lives, Mr. Speaker. But we can't bring them into the program and force them to come in kicking and screaming. This is about those who want to continue in programs because they benefit. And, Mr. Speaker, it's paying off because more are graduating from school, going on to post-secondary education and getting careers.
The honourable member for St. Barbe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Clearly, the Premier, former Minister of Child, Youth and Family Services, needs a briefing on the department that he used to be the Minister of, because he doesn't seem to understand the question. The question is, why do you extend support services to some people until age 21, whereas others can only receive the same support service until age 19, even though all of them are deemed to be in need of protective intervention?
The Honourable the Premier.
I'm glad to get another chance to continue that discussion, Mr. Speaker, because
Order, please.
thank you, Mr. Speaker, because it's a very important and serious matter for this government, and it was important enough that we took the steps to make those changes to ensure that people continue to receive programs and services beyond the age of 16, Mr. Speaker. But we also see times, and again I've tried to tell this to the member opposite earlier, that I've seen cases as well where children and youth want to leave those programs, and Mr. Speaker, they leave those programs and services, Mr. Speaker, and they don't want to be there. And we know members opposite have shown a concern in the past about, well, why do you let them leave those programs? Members opposite has asked questions about it before, Mr. Speaker. This is about continuing those supports. And we've got some great programs and partnerships. Choices for Youth is a great example, Mr. Speaker, of great work they're doing with youth in Newfoundland and Labrador.